from yesterday. I see a lot of new faces, which makes me also very happy. I'm sorry that I missed you yesterday, but then you missed me too. And I think a lot of people missed a lot of people because of all of that snow and so, but we did hold forth until almost 11 o'clock last night here. I don't want to just single out some individuals because that's not fair, but I'm very, very happy to see a family that took classes with me in Chicago, God, I guess almost, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't want to say too much because they look very young. But anyway, they moved into the Pennsylvania area and they drove over 100 miles tonight, and I appreciate that very much. And so I do say thank you again to the Wells. There's another gentleman who introduced himself who also drove in from Harrisburg, another person from New York. So although, and I won't say the crowd is small because it is growing, and I'm appreciative of that, I want to thank you for those efforts. Obviously, the efforts are not for me. The efforts are for the subjects that's being presented, and hopefully the Creator will continue to bless me to tell the truth to you, to be able to research and find out the false from it, and then at least leave you with a package that you can begin to do something with. As is all the case when possibly I ask that if negative thoughts must be brought, that I try to at least give a possible solution or at least a positive way to deal with it. Tonight is a little bit different because the subject matter at hand is not one where we have to look at negative or positive. It's one where we may have to draw a sexual aside. And as we get heavy into this tonight, and we'll have to begin to kind of look at really what we call our own bodies and what we call our own minds. It's a little bit different because it will be the man, woman, and children lecture. As I stated to some people at the table, and it is never my intention to slight anybody, but I'm only one person, and as I say, only one set of vocal cords. So I did ask some of you that were asking questions at the product table to wait until I came here to answer it in general. I appreciate those of you who use restraint and, again, I gotta say respect enough to do that. So I hope it won't bore you if I take about 10 minutes about how these things work. And if you wish to purchase it from it, we'll be more than happy. If you wish to order it from us in Chicago, we'll be more than happy. As long as the Creator lets us stay in business, we will be able to fill your orders. The sheets on the table there give you a product list. We have over 170 products. It gives you a book list. We have close to about 48 books that we handle. It gives you the tape list. I have close to 65 tapes. About 12 of them are videos. The rest are audios on multitudinous subjects. If any of you, by the way, want to use the BioGuard or the free radical inhibitor, I don't have one of these up here, but you aren't able tonight to afford the $18 or $20, we do have the packets, the trial size packets on the table. They sell anywhere from $8.50 at the most expensive down to $2. And of course, if you want that, then let's ask Marsha about it. So hopefully that will explain or at least give a general overview of what the products are, how they're used, and it's better that I do it this way to continue the individual thoughts on it. Also like to ask Marsh down the line again. Oh, never mind, I see a cup. Never mind, you got one cup on there because I'm going to need some water before it's over with. The three subjects tonight we're going to cover are usually held individually as individual lectures. What I've done because of Brother Bua, his sister, and those that invited us in, is to agree to do these three lectures in one. Consequently, we could be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't intend to be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. I doubt if you do. So as a consequence, I'm going to try and give maybe 45 minutes or half an hour on each subject. And then, as I always try to do, rather than run away from you, open it up for questions and comments and interfacing. Before we start the questions, comments, and interfacing, we'll take about a 15-minute break. If any of you have to leave at that time, then we do have some tapes available on the table already for the long versions of those tapes. And since you are in attendance tonight, if you wish to get the long versions, we will give you a reduced price on those three lectures that we're giving tonight, the man, the woman, and the children lecture. The woman lecture is usually $19.95, the man lecture is $14.95, and the children lecture is $14.95. But we will give it to you at $10 a piece for all three tapes if you want it. And after we leave or so on and so forth, you'll be able to buy the tapes here again from Brother Memoir, again, and whoever else is associated with him. Again, we're going to get very deep tonight. We're going to get into subject matter that may be somewhat trepidous to some, and you're going to hear some comments that are going to be way out. You're going to hear some suggestions that may be way out. Having talked with some of you individually, what I used to consider way out now is commonplace, because many of you are already dealing with the thoughts of aliens and interfacings here and all kind of genetic splicings. So although at one time this lecture was phenomenal, I think now it's just run-of-the-mill. It's just something else that would be good to have in your arsenal to oppose or to understand that either threatens you or that intends to work with you. I make no bones about the contents. I simply say it's as I research it and I give it to you in the same way. We're going to start off with the woman lecture, and that's because women run everything anyway, right? Yeah. How many say women run everything? Don't you even do it? I didn't want to see those hands. You started to raise the hands up too. I saw you. Let's just say that probably some of the most interesting products and subjects on this planet are women. Isn't that a terrible way to address the female gender? But you are, if you're a female, simply because females, I think, are the worst critics of other females on earth. They would tear a man apart, but then they'll give some reason for why that woman made him like that, or the lack of a woman made him like that. But when it comes to interaction with each other, it can get to be terrible. Hopefully some of that is changing, but as you will see tonight, there are some times when you do, if you're female, ally with each other. You do come together as one in the face of some things that men might say or do, O.J. Simpson excluded. What I'm going to say is simply this. The time we're living in is a time when knowledge and hopefully wisdom will be manifest. Without true understanding, it's impossible to manifest complete wisdom because it'll be somewhere there a lack of knowledge. I let the chips fall where they may. I did some research, and in the dictionary, it stated that woman was an adult female human being. I don't think we've got any problem with that at all. Is anyone have a problem with that definition? All right, we're together at least at the start. It says that womanhood was a time or condition of being a woman. It makes sense to me. I don't think it's a big deal there either. We have an interesting interface with this one because it said that girl was a female child or a young unmarried woman, or at one time that the word girl meant young boy. That one kind of grabbed me. I had to do some other references. You know, when you get to your third Ibid definition for whatever the original was, I said, that's interesting. It's going to become even more interesting as we move on. I look biblically because I find many people feel that they understand the Bible and feel that whatever is in the Bible is adequate and true. And so consequently, it's stated there that the rib from Adam was created to give man a helpmeet, which was referred to as woman. Created from Adam's rib to be a helpmeet to man. I didn't know if that meant helpmeet the bills, or if it meant helpmeet somebody at the train station or what, but it did say helpmeet. I'm sure you have a better interpretation of that than I, but in my ignorance I questioned what that was. With all of that around, I then began to look even deeper into the phenomenal set of cells and set of personality and spirit that is a female. And I found this, which I know all of you will agree to, that woman is indeed, bless her heart, the weaker sex. That woman is in general, again, a prime example of what womb man can be, and that, of course, men are obviously much smarter than women, but because of the brain structure, but we still try to be compatible. Do you have any problems with any of those last three statements? A lot of problems. Why did I think that some women may have that problem? Are there any men with any problems with what I just said? One man. Well, you don't count. You're just one man with a problem, okay? All the rest of the men did not raise their hands, all right? I used to say that because he wanted you to buy his tapes. That's all. I know what it is. Well, I think I can give you proof, even though I said that in exaggeration, but if you can back up an exaggeration, it may become a truth. So let's see if I can back that up. I want you to listen carefully now before you pass judgment, because I'm now going to show you why I said that. I think you may even agree with me at the end. Maybe not. Throughout the world, there are more widows than widowers. There are more women, 100 and over, than there are men, 100 and over. The female body, on a worldwide racial consideration, retains the characteristics of youth longer than males do. Less, or at least fewer women, have hardening of the arteries. Most women, again, have a tendency to adjust blood pressure a little bit quicker than men and faster, if you would. And that the incidence of ulcers is much lighter in women than in men. Let me say, however, that's changing as women are beginning to develop ulcers, and I can't understand why, on a per capita ratio by state in the United States, up to 60% as fast as men. There's more heart failure and apoplexy in men than there is in women. And when it comes to retaining breath and using oxygen, women are much less easy to suffocate and can retain that ability longer than men. Women can endure cold weather on a general basis better than men. And in higher altitudes where there's 18% less oxygen, and of course they don't know about our oxygen products, women survive much better. Women who live in the Andes Mountains, of course all women must live in the Andes Mountains, can carry heavier loads than men because the oxygenating capacity being stronger, the muscle texture and tenure is better. Just as I'm going about halfway through this, I guess you can begin to see how I'm supportive of my original premise and statement. You do see how I'm backing this up, right? How many agree that I'm backing it up? No. Well, I think I'm doing a good job at backing this up. Let me go on. Maybe I haven't said enough. Let's just let me go on with this a bit. The female brain not only has a finer texture and has a more complex organization than that of the man, but relative to overall body weight, it is 1/4 heavier. Particularly like that, but there are fewer females, well, that's not true, baby miscarriages than there are boy or male baby miscarriages. Let me repeat that, because that's a statistic that I don't have all the percentiles on, but it is a fact. Fewer women coming to term have a loss of a child, again, through whatever the miscarriage reason again, that is a child, girl child, than that is a boy child. They carry more girls to term successfully than boy babies to term. During childhood, the female is mentally superior to males. The female also has a larger thyroid gland, which has 3 lobes to the male's 2-lobe gland. You must remember that because it's going to have a very important bearing when we really get heavy here. Now, and also, as I promised you, there would be 3 glands, secret glands of females. That is one that has been misquoted or not properly given its place is the 3-lobed female thyroid gland versus the 2-lobed male thyroid gland. The girl of 7, because of high, rich thyroid hormones, again, thyroxine, has a brain capacity that a boy does not get until he's nearly 14. That is double the age. A brain capacity that a boy child does not get until past puberty at 14. Strong mental and physical women conceive girl babies almost all of the time. And in fact, I would say almost, as we will see, that 99% of all original zygotes are female when formed. Now, with all of that, and of course I have proven without a shadow of a doubt. All of the things that I stated and stressed at the beginning, right? Right. And as a man, it makes me feel much better to say that I have backed that up, even if I haven't. The whole point is that the ladies, the women, seem to have a lot on the male body and the male brain up until a certain thing begins to happen. Then most of the things that I have talked about begin to reverse, and the problem starts with the word men. The word is menstruation. Menstruation. I didn't say menstruation, I said menstruation, or the menses. I will refer to it from this point on as the menses. Menstruating women lose calcium, thyroxine, iodine, phosphorus, lecithin, vitamin E, vitamin B1, 6, 12, 15, B2, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc. And some of this loss starts 2 weeks before the menses actually starts in what is called leukorrhea. Now, just to say that may not make a lot of impact. It should. In case it doesn't, let me just explain a couple of those things that I mentioned. Calcium, for instance, not only in teeth and so, but stabilizes the nervous system throughout the body. Without calcium, the nervous system cannot function correctly. Phosphorus is found in all healthy, normal cells. Iodine, the lack of which, or overabundance of which, leads into what we call gigantism, or, even though it's not the master gland, it affects almost every gland from the throat down and a few from the throat up again. The growth and maintenance of the body through the growth and maintenance of the thyroid gland is a must. And, interesting enough, the thyroid gland tends to swell during menstruation. There's a reason for that. Science has also gone so far as to prove that the birth of congenital idiots increases as the iodine supply decreases, and the type of sea iodine, like that from dulse and kelp and these kind of sea plants and algae and lichen family, decrease. In this case, we've all been blessed because now when it rains, it pours. We all can go out and buy iodized salt. But understand, in many cases, the iodized salt is from a land-based consumption, and land plants are not as rich in chlorophyll, and therefore their mineral value does not have as much energy in them as does a sea vegetative. Now, we accept this concept of menstruation as being a thing that is done for the health of a woman, is decreed by nature since one is born female, and that's all it has to do with it. Let me state that that is not exactly the case. There are women throughout the world, even now, who do not menstruate, never did menstruate, and in the sense of a tribe or nation, have the profundity and propensity in generally to not menstruate. We find that there has been a lot of misinterpretation from some so-called holy sacred books, and possibly a lot of purposeful, well, how can I put it, changings of what was taught at one time by the phylum and gender called men, heading up organizations such as churches and medical societies for certain purposes. Now, maybe that's a challenge that I should throw out. Maybe that's something that you won't accept. But let us continue to look into this whole idea again. Women have been told, and they have traced it back to biblical interpretation by many prophets, priests, ministers, and reverends, that it is an unclean issue that was necessary, and that women should be ostracized from a society or tribe during the menses, and it was a sign of her uncleanliness. We've also been told that it is the breakdown of the uterine walls and endometriosis, being when the uterine walls is very affected, but the breaking down of the egg before it is fertilized. Consequently, this is why the issue is necessary. I state none of those things may be true, but I can state anything. It's not enough that I state it. it's the best that we begin to look even more and more into this whole subject matter, if you would. With the advent of monogamy, and in many cases the ancients were a very poly system of growth, the church needed people to hold on to. It wanted a whole family because not only then did this church become stronger in number, but also the tithing and the support was probably more ingrained. They also proffered this idea that a woman should be separated from the tribe or nation during this time, and that this was something to be frowned upon and was something that showed that woman was therefore less than man. I state it is not a cleansing process at all, and that only is it partially the deterioration of the female egg unfertilized. Not only do women undergo the menses, but there is a subject, and I hope again that you're adult enough to let me deal with these tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun here tonight, and you'll be able to to discuss with me later on all that you would like. There is something called on the streets, again, the whites, scientifically called leukorrhea. Leukorrhea, or the whites, is a catarrhal condition of the womb and an inflammation of the uterine lining, much as endometriosis starts there too. And I state it's one of the reasons that causes menstruation. During this phase, leukorrhea, not menstruation, women suffer sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks prior to the start of the menses, which will continue sometimes for 2 weeks, and usually at the least 3 days. This means that the female is subject to a constant loss of very interesting blood plasma and fluids. Let me explain to some of you who think that it is smart to laugh at leukorrhea and feel that it is not something that is detrimental. Let me tell you what's in some of the leukorrhic fluid prior to the menses or after the menses. The fluids lost in leukorrhea are composed of important vital substances such as lipoids, alkali lactates, natural sodium, potassium, sodium carbonate, calcium, and brain and nerve foods, highly rich in lecithin and phosphatidylcholines. The mucous corpuscles, again, present in leukorrhea are in reality not mucous corpuscles at all. They are what we call hemoglobin capable, simply meaning they are on their way to becoming red blood corpuscles capable of carrying oxygen, which, if you've been to any of these 2 lectures at all, I tell you, you don't get enough oxygen ever. It's almost impossible on this planet to get enough oxygen faced with the stress and hydrocarbons and radiation that we are. So all of these are potentially human blood cells, red hemoglobin capable, oxygenating, that is being lost before they can even be formed. And then comes the menses themselves. Any wonder that anyone, and since this is now the bane of the female, wouldn't be irritable, in fact dizzy, possibly anemic, and grow old and show the signs of old with gray hairs, wrinkled skin, and so even faster if you're losing this 4 to 5 weeks out of a 30 to 31 day period. And some women honestly do go through that. I hope you don't know any of them, and I hope you're not one, because they are a heck to be around if that's the case. And what can you expect? The person is actually using hemoglobin on a regular basis, and before the cells can even be made, they're losing it. I state this is not a natural condition, and it is not my big ego that states this. I have done research on those who have done the research, and in the little bit of research that I have done, I have to agree with what these august doctors and medicine people have reached the term to understand. In addition, it is proposed that if a female could stop these things, both the leukorrhea and the menses, for no more than at least 24 hours, and that after that is much too much, that a female could have the capability of producing and bearing a child through term without a male being around. There is in history, if you do the research again, a theory called the ovist theory. It's spelled O-V-I-S-T. It's pronounced A-H-V-I-S-T. The ovist theory, I state, was proven by a Professor Jacques Loeb of Stanford University back in the 50s, 1953 through 5. The ovist theory states that the embryo develops from the egg alone and does not require spermatozoon in order to begin the promulgation of mitosis. In other words, a woman can impregnate herself and bring to term without a male being around, producing the male spermatozoon. The prevailing medical theory now is called epigenesis, and therefore I state through these other researchers that epigenesis is not proven necessary, and yet it is what everybody now in this heterogeneous makeup in the United States pretty much believes in. Also, however, this begins to propose some other proponents, which even if you might accept those, may not accept the latter one. It means that the female, if we're going to go by RNA DNA factor, was probably formed before the male. You cannot get a man from a man. You cannot get a woman from a man, but you can get a man from a woman, and you can get a woman from a woman. This is what I propose the old church heads had to change, had to delete from the books that talked about it, and had to delete from the book that you refer to as the Bible. For you see, males cannot reproduce themselves, and without females, the species phylum of man on earth as we understand him would not be in existence. And there was a time when that species was threatened. Okay. Now we get to the light stuff, or should I say, the heavier contention. Dr. Edward Bischoff, an MD, started what is called the modern acceptance of the theory of epigenesis. That was started in 1864, for those of you taking notes. 1854, for those of you taking notes. That means that the zygote and uterine development by union of sperm and egg is what Bishop's theory was. His theory has been accepted. It is only a theory. For centuries, people had believed in, and some people still do believe in, what is called parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. And the ancient Parthenon in Greece was a product of a culture that believed in parthenogenesis, having been given to them by some ancients called Akkadians and Natufians, who believed in the parthenogenic receptor of the human egg, and that female was only one of the regenerators of that, and that when man fell, then the thought of epigenesis even occurred. Before that time, it was understood that complete cyclic birth for a God-man had to be parthenogenic. That was their belief. In the year 1955, four very prominent British doctors of medicine, Dr. Stanley Balfour Lynn, Dr. Bernard Camber, Dr. David Wine Williams, and Dr. A.E. Moron, all studied some 10 cases of virgin births and agreed that in some strange way, indeed, parthenogenesis had to have happened. The most famous study case was that of Emma Marie Jones. She was a German woman who became impregnated during the Blitzkrieg time in 1944 at Hitler's Germany. This happened at the height of the war, and this woman was entombed, if you would, in a castle. Fortunately, there was a stream underground, and there were lots of canned provisions for over 15 months. She was found to have been in her 7th month of pregnancy when rescued. That has never been explained by the so-called medical sciences of this day, but was a common occurrence, especially under the stress of entombment in many ancient times. We'll look into that later too. If the ovist theory is to be even propagated and definitely accepted, then we must begin to see what kind of conceptuality brought this into being. How can we begin to say that this may have been the way? And what does this mean that the species of human on Earth actually is? We see in studying classical history and into looking into what the ancients have said that a lot of different practices go on and a lot of different worships are coming about or are beginning to be dropped. The question has always been, and you've heard it posed before, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I think the old axiom was, which came first, the chicken or the egg on the chick or the chicken on the egg? I ask you for a vote. I want you to raise your hand if you believe, when I ask it, that the chicken came first, and then I want you to raise your hand if you believe that the egg came first, but I don't want you to raise both hands, nor do I want you to vote twice. Okay? If you believe that the first creature was the chicken and not the egg, raise your hand. Okay, roughly around 20 people. Please lower your hands. If you believe it was the egg, please raise your hand. Which way is it? Okay. About 31 people. How many didn't vote because you don't know which you don't want to be made a fool of, so you're just not going to commit? There you go, young truth. All right. That figures. All right. Fence centers, placaters, politicians. All right. Well, it obviously has to be the chicken. I mean, doesn't it? You know, what kind of doubt could there be it's not the chicken? Especially since in 1975 at Stanford University, they connected a vibrational detective sensor to an unfertilized egg and got a rhythmic pulsating beat just like that of a human heart. That experiment has been repeated knowingly 230 times with the same results on an unfertilized egg. What is an unfertilized egg? Anyone real intelligent here, right quick? Yes. No rooster around. No rooster was there. Well, then what does that do about the chicken and the rooster? But then we said a chicken and an egg, huh? Not a hen and an egg, not a rooster and an egg, but a chicken and an egg. This would mean that possibly there was some kind of a life pulse in an egg generated by the female that did not receive fertilization. A life pulse. Obviously, then the thing would be, are there any other species in nature, plant, animal, otherwise, that could begin to substantiate that or show possibly the same kind of proclivity? How many have ever seen an acorn or cut an acorn in half? Just raise your hands briefly. Interesting enough, if you look at that acorn, there's an imprint right there where the seed should be. And in many cases, it looks like a full-grown oak tree. Or there's actually a formation before they begin to genetically mutate some of your acorns. But it grew naturally. What looked like a big oak tree, which showed where that little seed might grow and what it might grow into. Also, the silk moth, little lowly silk moth, reproduces itself without a mate. And in fact, if the moth mates, it cannot produce silk, and it dies soon after mating. A lowly aphid, some call it an aphid, I call it an aphid. Little old lowly bug, if you would, reproduces without a mate, and yet the spinum of man is supposed to be able to subjugate and conjugate with just about anything on earth. Can't do such. The Egyptian, of course, a very non-essential, backward, non-pyramid building society, had a very interesting thing. They worship almost what is behind me on the wall, a scarab, which was referred to as the scarab beetle. Scarab is a very interesting creature, has a 7-year cycle, and at that time, if it does not mate, it reproduces. If it does not mate, it reproduces. Up till that time, it's capable of casting off its skin, borning itself anew, and if it does mate, there is new reproduction, and that one dies, and the other one may carry a seed, which then has to be fertilized by another beetle. But if that chain doesn't start, the beetle does not need a mate for reproduction. Now that sacred beetle, the good luck charm of the scarabus, obviously now may grow in its meaning as to what they were trying to say to us and why they characterize a little insect as being strong and mighty. I give you food for thought. If, and I say this very much iffy, if the human species is the highest life form on the planet Earth, then isn't it strange that seeds, moths, aphids can do what humans cannot do if you believe in epigenesis only? I state since nature always shows by sign, and nature has nothing to hide from man, because man to nature is as a beetle to a planet, then maybe we should look at what nature has said and is saying. All of that simply leads up to a final, or maybe a commencement, idea of what and who we are as humans. And I state that the story that they didn't tell you, that is now beginning to come out in various books under the New Age concept, that is now beginning to surface in research centers and medical facilities throughout the earth, and they still will not share it in general with the public, with the laity either, was that this is a very old planet, and that when life forms even begin to resemble in any way what we now think life forms on earth should, that they were hermaphrodites or dual-seeded, that they were androgynous or androgens, having male and females on the same plant stem, and that's an interesting word too, as you shall see, and that at one time there were even Etherians or evanescent. In other words, there was no solid form human on earth, yet there was intelligent life in a form. Here's the way that story goes, and I move it carefully and slowly, and I will state you now, in the next 10 minutes, it's going to get very rough. And if some of you feel that you cannot take this kind of digging, go back and buy some products from the back or from the table and close your ears. But if I just made you very hungry for what may be happening, then let me finish before you reach a conclusion. Let me state, and I'll try to deal with it as scientifically as possible. It's going to get to be very interesting.